Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome back. Thank you for coming to my YouTube channel. It's a pleasure to have you here. Today I will be speaking about freedom and safety. It's been a big topic on a lot of people's minds recently, and I think for good reason. We're seeing this interesting balance play out between the two, where tighter and tighter restrictions are being placed on human beings, their civil liberties, their rights, with the idea of safety in mind. So, as many of us know, this tends to be a very slippery slope. And personally, I have much more alarm bells on the side of government overreach and stripping of freedoms than I do on the side of fear of the virus, right? So that's my bias. You could probably tell that from the various content and posts that I've shared recently. So I just took down this post off of Facebook in which I was talking about some of this stuff, including the word safetyism. I took down that post for a variety of reasons and had my account restricted, although I found that it was not for that reason. It was for something else that I posted. So I want to just talk a little bit about what those two things are and why I'm sharing this stuff. Explain myself a little bit. I found that my perspective received a fair amount of anger, frustration, disappointment, things like that. People basically saying that I'm being irresponsible. I'm practically a murderer, basically. Practically a murderer. And that's kind of been the narrative this whole time with the way this virus has been running rampant in our society. My perspective about it is this, though. My perspective is that we need to get back to a place where we are allowing individuals to make individual choices about their own health and safety. Now, I get the argument is that if your individual choices are endangering other people around you, then you don't have the freedom to make those choices, right? But where is that line drawn exactly? Like, how much can we restrict people in terms of their freedoms, their rights, for the greater good, for the safety of all? This is a tricky question. Obviously, as I said, it's one we've been grappling with a lot in the past year, trying to find a balance with. And I don't think that we've found a very good balance with it. It's clearly not sustainable, and there's a tremendous amount of collateral damage happening with the measures that have been taken by governments, and kind of a constant state of fear being perpetrated by a variety of organizations, governments, etc., which I think is tremendously harmful, on top of the dangers that we have taking place with the pandemic. So, a couple things. Let's see. I'm just going to read the post that I wrote first. So, one of the things that bothers me most about this moment in society is this move towards safetyism. A society obsessed with safety will become a weak and sickly society. We're living this story right now. It is not government's job to keep us healthy, and especially not with mandatory procedures. Furthermore, the safety that we're pushing is an illusion. Nobody is safe. One of the saddest realities from the past year is that for some people, it was at their last. They lived their final days, prisoners in their own homes, unable to see their loved ones. But it's true. It's a reality that we hate to acknowledge in the West. We built complex structures to deny and avoid the one thing that we can all rely on. We're all going to die. Death is natural and beautiful. It is a transformation, not an ending. For many people, especially those living in old and sickly bodies, it is a release from the painful form that they were trapped inside of. We cannot, with government mandate or with anything else, keep everybody safe. This type of push always leads to ruthless totalitarian policies. I believe that we have been watching as the framework for an authoritarian surveillance state is laid before our eyes. It has gone too far already. We have two choices: to watch passively as more and more freedoms get taken away, or stand up and speak out. This is not about safety. It is about power and control. I was born in a free country, and I do not take these freedoms for granted. I hope that you don't either. So that was met with a lot of criticism on the Facebook, which is not too surprising for me. I was expecting that. People saying that I'm callously promoting this survival of the fittest mentality, which is not taking into account the health of all people. Although I would argue that locking people in their homes, closing people's businesses, pushing constant fear, and now basically mandating an experimental injection is also not in the good of public health. So there's kind of a trade-off either way. Another part of my perspective on this is that if I was old and sick and really in danger of this thing negatively affecting me, hospitalizing me, or killing me, I'm fully 100% confident that there is zero chance that I'd ask the rest of the world to shut down, lock themselves in their homes, wear masks on their faces, suspend their lives indefinitely to keep me safe. There's zero chance I would believe that. And I've had this belief the whole time during this thing, is that these mandates are coming from government bureaucrats, not from the actual people who are in danger. And certainly you could make the argument here that we need to speak up for the vulnerable people, and they will not speak up for themselves. Sure, I do believe in a strategy of protecting the vulnerable while allowing other people to continue living their lives, and stopping this constant campaign of fear and control that is being pushed upon us by governments and by certain corporations. It's not sustainable. It is a very slippery slope, and it will only continue to get worse if we allow it to continue to get worse. This model of health that we are pushing does not make any sense. One of the worst things that you can do for your human immune system is to be in a stressed out state. And we've been pushing this absolute constant fear diet. I mean, some of the interactions I had with people on this post were very indicative of that. I mean, people saying that choosing not to get vaccinated was essentially the same as putting your child on a ventilator and or killing your child or something along those lines. It's like, where are you getting this information from? The risk factors for children are incredibly low for this virus, thank God. And even for anybody, most people of most ages, the risk factors are incredibly low. And we've still been pushed to this constant diet of fear. I'm not saying that it's not real. I'm not saying that people aren't dying. I'm not trying to trivialize those facts in any way. All right, so a little bit more on this before we wrap up. I don't want to spend my time obsessed about this stuff, trying to fight against these massive forces that seem to be moving despite the will of many people. Although even just in the microcosm of this post that I shared, I did find that there are quite a number of people who are friends and and people who I know who are pretty much in favor of mandates and or lockdowns and basically all these oppressive measures that I think are just deeply wrong, especially when we're giving our government the power to lock us down and force us to wear masks and blah blah blah, close our businesses, whatever. That power is going to be something that they're going to use again and again and again, and it's not going to be for your health and safety. Hate to be cynical about it, but it's just, we see these patterns repeating over and over again. So with that in mind, I want to get into a little bit of the reasons why I consider some of this stuff to be so distressing, and why I think we need to be on high alert about our rights. Not just about our safety, but also about our freedoms. Because, if you're locked in a prison cell, you're pretty safe. Anyways, so during this time, we are witnessing some striking similarities with the regimes of Hitler, Stalin, and Mao. We are seeing widespread censorship, even censorship of medical professionals, many medical professionals, especially those pushing any kind of cure or treatment for this condition that is not a vaccine. So that's an interesting thing to note. Widespread censorship, state-sponsored media propaganda, and this is one of the things, especially with Facebook. I mean, they've literally now come out and said that Facebook is an arm of the Biden White House. They're working in conjunction to decide which content is allowed and which content is not allowed. And even if you think this is all entirely in the interests of public health and safety, it is still an alarming precedent, you must admit. So, what else? State-sponsored media propaganda and unholy alliances between governments and the most powerful corporations. And this was actually the thing that I did get my Facebook account restricted for, was for quoting Benito Mussolini. Here's the quote. Fascism should rightly be called corporatism, as it is the merger of corporate and government power. So, no quoting dictators on Facebook. I don't know if YouTube has rules about that, but that's the rule I found out. And it was funny because I was quoting them in reference to what I'm seeing Facebook doing in working in conjunction with the Biden White House to censor information. So, yeah, funny stuff going on. So there's a strong push towards disarming the population. Whatever you believe about the Second Amendment, there's a strong push towards disarming the population. And I know what the justifications are, and I know that they make sense. I really wish that we didn't have guns. If nobody had guns, that would be absolutely fantastic. I'm super nonviolent, and it would be so easy if we could all be like that. But apparently, we need some type of balance. So we need to push and pull. So there is violence. There are guns. And we don't want to live in a society where the only force, the only power is with the government. The American people have tremendous power because we are an armed population. We're a population that has, I believe, somewhere possibly even more guns than people, which is insane. I don't know. I've only heard that statistic, so I might be misquoting it, but we're a very armed population. And I've come to see that as more of a valuable thing in the past year, just in observing how tyrannical the government can be in swiftly taking away your rights. And not even just in regards to COVID lockdowns. I mean, there was a time this past summer, 2020, when they imposed a 2 p.m. curfew in Santa Monica. 2 p.m. curfew. So I was just strolling around in the sunshine, middle of the afternoon, and I had an armed police officer with his weapon out come up to me and basically tell me I had to get back in my house, which is like, yeah, that's pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. Tensions are high. So we are seeing the divide and conquer strategy employed expertly, with the media stoking tensions between political parties, racial groups, and I think most intentionally between the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. This was what I noticed also in the post that I made, was that the aggressive division between these groups is really intensified, dehumanizing almost in some regards. And I understand why people believe that. I mean, if you've been constantly listening to the fear propaganda that is being put out by the mainstream media, it would make sense to think that not only is it irresponsible to not be vaccinated, but actually you are killing people. You're killing people if you choose not to take this injection. That's what some people believe. What I believe is that allowing the state, the government, to decide that every single person, every single citizen needs to take this experimental medical procedure in order to participate in normal society is a terrifying precedent to set. Now, if the vaccines work so well, why do you need to force everybody to get them? Another argument is that some people are immunocompromised, so they can't get the vaccine. So everybody else needs to get the vaccine to protect the immunocompromised people. But you don't know what my medical history is. You don't know my reasons for not getting the vaccine. And I shouldn't have to tell you that. That's my personal choice. Again, I think it's a alarming precedent to set. There's this whole panic, emergency, crisis mindset going on right now, which makes sense when you're being constantly hit with this fear, being locked in your home, being et cetera, name the list over and over again. It makes sense that people just want to get done with this. They just want it to be over. But I think this is really where the line must be drawn in terms of, like, if you do not have the right to decide what you do with your own body, like, what do you have left? Seriously, what do you have left? That's such a literal and metaphorical barrier that's being pierced right now. With these vaccinations that are experimental, it is science. Yeah, it's definitely science. It's a massive science experiment. And I hope and I pray that they are going to do what they say they're going to do and not do too much collateral damage. But I don't know. And nobody knows. Nobody knows what the long-term effects of this vaccination are. That's the simple scientific truth. Anybody who's telling you that they know that these things are safe and effective on a long-term basis is lying to you. And so the idea of forcing them on people and talking about mandating them for people to continue making a living or to go to certain places or whatever is a terrifying precedent to set. It is the foundation for a medical apartheid, with first and second class citizens being divided based on vaccination status. And again, to do this in the context of an experimental vaccine whose effects are unknown is complete insanity. It's complete insanity. All right, so that's the divide between the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. And again, the push on this is really like I'm on my side of this. I'm not telling you anything about what you need to do with your body at all. That's a one-sided push. One side is saying to the other side, you must do this. You must put this in your body. It's for the good of all, for the greater good, for public safety. And the other side is saying, it's my body, it's my choice. I get to do what I want with my body. That's what it's like to be a free human in a free society. So my push on this one is back towards individual rights, individual responsibility. And we can protect the vulnerable using our individual rights, our individual choices. All right, so let's see. Yeah, you're taking a risk in either way, on either side. You're taking a risk if you take the vaccine, or you're taking the risk that you're going to get COVID. That's the reality when you have freedom of choice. Despite the unknown future outcomes, there is a massive push to vaccinate everybody, even the young and healthy. In fact, there is evidence that the vaccine may be more dangerous for certain demographics than COVID is. For instance, very young people who are not in danger from the virus. Statistically speaking, those are the facts. And judging by the conversation that I had on Facebook, and people aren't aware of this, but those are the facts. And it's like, okay, well, maybe Delta is going to be different, but we don't, until we see the numbers on that, until we see that it actually is different, we shouldn't be making sweeping public policy measures based on hypotheticals. And that's kind of how this whole thing started, right? With hypothetical scientific modeling. So either way, it must be up to the individual to decide what to do with his or her body. I'm kind of repeating what I already said because now I'm reading it. Sorry, folks, if you're still listening, thanks for sticking with me. I'm just working it all out, trying to figure out what I believe and what needs to happen for me to keep myself safe, keep my family safe, and keep those around me safe. Because I actually do care about that, although you may believe otherwise by my radical opinions. All right, so back to kind of the historical references of this. It's basically we're saying right now that nobody will be safe until everybody is vaccinated. So the historical context here is to remember that the Jews were considered to be unclean, spreaders of disease, and their attempted extermination was partially in the name of public health and safety. Comparing the current situation to genocide may seem hyperbolic, but the slippery slope metaphor has been coming up again and again recently. This starts by dividing the population against each other and dehumanizing the minority. Are we seeing that happening right now? Absolutely, we are. Another thing that these historical dictators had in common was overwhelming and confusing their populations with fear. Absolutely, this is happening right now. Fearful people are way more compliant, and they will even beg for their governments to impose draconian laws to keep them safe. We saw this a lot in 2020, as terrified populations pushed their governments for lockdowns and mask mandates, despite a lack of evidence or any meaningful cost-benefit analysis. Here in America, these issues have become deeply political, with the Republican Party favoring freedom and personal responsibility, while the Democrats have become the party of lockdowns and mask mandates. Dr. Joe, the President of the United States, actually claimed that nobody would have died from COVID if it wasn't for President Trump. Also interesting to note that Biden and Harris were were very vaccine hesitant before January of 2021 or 2020 or so. Interesting to note, because they thought that Trump was making the vaccine himself. And I wouldn't want to take that vaccine either. Fair enough. Around that same time, Trump, while still the sitting president of the United States, was banned from the major social media sites. In my opinion, this was a shocking feat of partisan censorship done under false pretenses. It is clear that their intention was to defeat and destroy Trump by any means necessary. For the record, I am not a Trump supporter, but it has been crazy to watch the vast majority of hate, violence, and racism coming from the left, while they claim to be the ones fighting against those things. Interesting to note here that the Democrats and the pharmaceutical lobby also control almost all of the corporate media giants that I mentioned earlier. So this again is this unholy alliance between big government, big corporations, big media, essentially controlling what you think and say and do. Whatever side you're on in regards to COVID and safety, you must admit that this is clearly and intensely happening in many different regards right now. And this is one of those dictatorship warning signs. So, after trying and failing to hide their censorship habits for a while, the Biden White House has now openly admitted to advising Facebook about which content is problematic. So now Facebook, one of the largest distributors of information in the country and the world, is openly censoring information based on the approved science of the Biden White House. One of the subjects of the censorship is any COVID cure that is not vaccination. YouTube and Twitter have similar habits, now acting as a thinly veiled censorship arm of the health oligarchs. But don't worry, it's all for your safety. So this censoring of other cures has been really crazy to watch, because it's like, okay, we got this public health crisis and people are dying. We're trying our best to get through this, keep as many people safe as possible. And we have governments and major media outlets censoring possible cures or even open discussion about these cures during a pandemic. It's fucking insane, right? It's completely insane. And it's based on this sort of, again, scary dystopian idea that the approved government science is the science that everybody needs to hear to keep everybody safe. And any other opinion is not only not allowed, but it's dangerous misinformation. So they obviously want to maintain their monopoly on the misinformation and disinformation campaigns. And that makes sense. You can see why they'd want to do that. And that's their prerogative for sure. So rant over for now. That's I just had to talk about these things out loud, get my opinions out there. Hopefully give you guys a little bit more sense of what my perspective is and why I'm saying these things. I'm not out here trying to kill people or whatever. I think that governments and these many powerful forces have not been honest with us this whole time. This is quite clear. And I'm skeptical that they have our best interests at heart. I think there are other interests that they have in mind. So that's it. Is that it? Do I have anything more to say? Yeah, I think I do actually have some more to say. I think this time period, this conversation that I'm having, the most important thing about it for me is being able to speak up and speak out and share our opinions in an open and free way. we're not a perfect country. We have a lot of problems, and we could certainly change a lot of things to improve. But I do believe that, historically speaking, we have a tremendous amount of freedom in this country. We have a constitution that is based on really important and beautiful values. And I believe that upholding that constitution is of the utmost importance. And this precedent that government can simply strip those rights at a whim when the emergency arises is really scary. What do we do about it? It starts with your words. Starts with your words. So with that in mind, I think I've said enough words for now. Starting to trail off a little bit with this video. If you're still here, thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. And I will see you guys in the next round. Peace, everybody.